Hello, let's get into the top 10 cards of the set. And we have some spicy cards right out of the gate to talk about honorable mentions. Elishnorn, I think, is actually relatively going to be a sweet card. It's just going to be probably outcosted for Pioneer and Modern in regards to also, I mean, the five mana in adjacent to the cost of the actual card. I imagine this card is going to be a all-star favorite for Commander, which is really going to inflate him or her as a card in general. Atraxa, I think, is a sweet card. It's kind of like Nib Mizzet, except it cares about card types, which could also work quite well with something like Tarmogoyf, where it cares about the number of types in your graveyard. So 7 mana reanimator spell. It's an angel, has a lot of keywords, so it's pretty solid if you can get it going into Pioneer. There's not really an reanimation style deck in the format right now. This could be the card that bridges that gap. One thing that is duly noted here is it does not have red, so the best red enchantment you don't actually have unless you do all 5 mana, right? Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is actually quite nice because you could pitch this, draw a couple cards, reanimate this, get more, but that's kind of a downside. The next card on our list is Nissa. I think she's relatively okay. She could very well see a decent amount of play in the top end of a curve in a green based strategy in Pioneer. I don't think it's ever going to hit Modern. She's outcosted for that. I mean, she comes down with 5 mana and 4 life. She basically would be, making a 4/4, I think, with her +1. So, I mean, her abilities do scale quite well, but there is a weird thing going on with this card in regards to the best green deck, or actually one of the few green decks in Modern, or in Pioneer, is Mono Green Devotion, which cares about Storm of the Festivals. So the fact that this costs 7 does make that worse, and so it's less likely to maybe not see a full play set in that deck. But it could see play in some other strategy that maybe could ramp into this. I'm super excited about maybe trying this card. Let me know if you guys want me to play any of these cards. I do already have Elishnorn brewed already for next season. I think I'm also going to brew this next card as well. In Pioneer, there's not really a dedicated, amazing burn deck. And Slothium, Mayhem, Donimus is pretty sweet in this regard. Doubling the non-combat damage. That means it works quite well with Cavalcade of Calamity. So that's kind of sweet that it works with that. But in general, you kind of want to be running burn. It is duly noted that his discard 2 cards is honestly the worst of the cycle. It's basically going down card advantage is not really worth it a lot of the time. But I really want to see if I can't break that first mode. And of course, make like burn. Now, I think that card will be pretty awesome. Not necessarily tier 1 style status, but I'm excited about trying it. All right, so let's get into the top 10 list. Hello, it's your host, KebbieG. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. Also, the bell notifications. Don't forget to check out the sweet stuff that's down in the description down below. Number 10 on our list, the Filigree Silax. And this card, for the most part, if you run one Ratchet Bomb, it's just a strictly better Ratchet Bomb, which has seen a decent amount of play. The legendary is a downside, but the fact that you could technically, if you can get this thing up, you could deal 20 to something if you use the red card. I think that should be correct. And that could very well win the game. But outside of that, it is a solid option for dealing with creatures at a mana value. I really wish this card said equal to or less than. Then the card would be even more pushed, it would be stronger. But of course, that is not something that Wizards will do. And I am happy that this card doesn't exile itself. So that way it's not a loop thing with Karn, which is actually quite nice for Pioneer. Because I don't want to see Karn get even better. So let's get into the number 9 card on my list. Number 9 on my list is Sword of Forge and Frontier. I think this card is actually quite sweet, and I really kind of want to try it with the run. So that way I could equip it, give it pro green, pro red, and he can't be the target of non-green spells. So good luck trying to target this thing. It's basically hexproof at that point. And it can't be countered, sweet, trample. What I love about the sword. I think it's perfect for competitive Magic, right? Because card advantage is essentially what you want from an equipment in a constructed playable format. And the fact that it lets you play extra lands, I don't think is really relevant, but it can help you ramp, I guess, into Thrawn to equip it to him later. But Thrawn's also indestructible on my turns. I just wanted to kind of shout him out. I don't think he exactly is, you know, the bee's knees of all things, but Sword of Forge and Frontier, I think, is a solid sword. I'm glad they didn't just give us like a terrible sword. Of course, like Body in Mind. So let's get to number 8 on our list. If you know anything about me, I love dinosaurs. And Thraanax Rex is the epitome of one of the best dinosaurs ever printed. 3 green and 4. Can't be countered. Trample, ward, 4, haste, toxic 4. If you could somehow get this thing down by turn 4 or 5, this thing is very unlikely to be answered by the time that you could actually kill your opponent, right? Because ward 4. So if you can get, the earlier you can get this thing down, of course, the better this card is. And I'm super excited about trying this card. It's one of the few cards that I think could make its way in, change the entire demographic of a dinosaur deck. Now, if this card could also be a sideboard potential card for the control matchup, which is actually quite nice and as well, right? Because Dinosaur's worst matchup is control. And having a sweet Rex is honestly the best thing you could ever ask for. So let's get into number 7 on my list. Number 7 is Mogalez, Maze Crusher. 1 generic red and green. Wizards, I do gotta say this, please stop printing so many legendary creatures. I think there's now maybe enough to make Bard class consistent without Bard class, you know, as the, if you don't have access to it, there's might be enough now to make a mid-range package with it. So we don't need more. Please stop printing so many legends. They're kind of just not have any value anymore. They're just so overprinted and so overdone. It's kind of, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Now, I am happy that this card was printed a legendary, but just because Bar Class does need like a little more oomph behind it, so that way it could maybe be a legit aggro mid-range strategy. That was always its weakness. It was a very good combo deck if it can get Bar Class and go off, but it had a very terrible mid-range plan that kind of was never up to par against other mid-range strategies. And the fact that this thing can get Vigilance and Menace so that we can get around Wandering Emperor. And it also has a 2 activation to give it a little bit of a bonus to get through a double block. And it also has the ability to destroy the artifact and enchantment, which are quite relevant in Pioneer. Fable the Mirror Breaker. But you could just keep going on with decent cards that match both of these criterias. Now, Luca, also, I put it on this list as number 7. It's not actually number 7. I think it will see a 1 of 2 of play in Bard class. So I wanted to shout it out at the exact same point. I also could have technically put this with the Dinosaur, the last slide, because I also think it's relatively good for dinosaurs. The +1 is okay. The -1, create a 3/3 beast, is really good with dinosaurs because after a Wrath, post-Wrath, you know, we want to be able to rebuild, and a Planeswalker does a good job at that in dinosaurs, and I love the -4. Really get scaled with dinosaurs because they have the enrage mechanic, and the fact that we could just deal a bunch of damage to our enraged things, get basic lands, draw cards, Carnage Tyrant, or, you know, there's tons of big dinosaurs, Galta, to make this card really, really powerful. So I really like this card for dinosaurs and Bard class. So, but I wanted to put it with Bard class. So let's get into number 6 on my list. Number 6 on my list is Mondrak, Glory Dominus. And basically it's a 4 mana, 4/4, basically doubles the amount of tokens that are generated. And it's honestly one of the easier ones to enable. 1, pay 4 life, potentially, sack 2 artifacts/creatures, give this thing indestructible, which is not really all that hard to do when you're making a lot of tokens. So there's a lot of fodder there. I think this card is actually relatively strong for Pioneer. I am kind of worried about this card being also very inflated in price due to the fact that this might be a sweet commander as a whole. And I think that's definitely going to inflate the cost of this card. So it's kind of a net negative in that regard. That's one of the reasons why Shieldred is such a ridiculous card. is $65, and it's played as a 2 of, 3 of, and Rakdos mid-range. This is probably going to be around the same price, maybe $50 around there. It's definitely a sweet card, sweet brew around. I definitely will probably brew this as well in this new season. So if you want to come back for the content for the season, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you can be alerted when it comes down. So let's get into number 5 on my list. Number 5 on my list is KebbieG Enduring. A 2-mana, 2/2 cat that basically states whenever a cat, him or a cat you can ETBs under your control, you can basically equip any equipment that you have access to that creature. And this is really awesome with other cats that typically, there's 2 of them that make tokens when they attack, which is really powerful with this type of effect. And the fact that we create 2/2 cats if all else fails, right? It's also quite nice. There is cats with double strike. So there's a lot going on that you could do with kitty cats. And this card, maybe in Pioneer, where Hammer Time is still trying to get its foothold on the format. And it's either cats or warriors. I'm not really sure which one is going to be the dominant one post this set. I'm definitely going to be trying the cat Hammer Time. I don't know let me know if you guys want me to do the warrior version as well. So let's get into number 4 on my list. Number 4 on my list is Venerated Rot Priest. It has combo implications in Modern for like Storm, etc. like that. If you could somehow target this thing with a lot of copies of a spell, that definitely will allow you to win the game or on the spot. It's a 1-mana 1/2. Now, keep in mind this card is also relatively decent in infect as basically a Shaper Sanctuary type thing. So if they target your creature with a removal, you could just make it where they take a poison counter. So at least you get a little bit going. The other card I really like for infect, it's not technically a part of this list, is the Seed Core. I figured since I was talking about an effect here, this card is also quite sweet with it, since all of the infect creatures are technically Phyrexian. And being able to give them a +2/1 is maybe relevant, especially with the unblockable one, right? So I really like that. And it might really just allow a control packaged toxic infect strategy to exist into Modern. So let's get into number 3 on our list. Number 3 on our list is Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. Now this card is more known for its static ability, which basically says all your creatures can activate abilities as if they had haste. So there is combo implications to this. So there is, I mean, it's actually pretty decent with the best card in Pioneer, which is Fable the Mirror Breaker. Immediately flips over. Once it flips over, you can just immediately start tapping it and start making copies. And then with Zeki's Chariot, since you're in Jund, we have something I'm going to talk about a little later. We have probably the ability to make the mana base work with a like Jund boat style strategy where Tyvar with Fable the Mirror Breaker and Chariot really kind of works in synergy. So I'm super excited about trying this. The -2 is kind of interesting. And what's also interesting about this card is there is a card from Kaldheim, where you could tutor for Tyvar. And you could definitely find this card. I have this card in a Elf deck and Pioneer for next season. I also might try to brew a deck with him as the combo style finish. You could do it with Devoted Druid. So that way you could immediately start tapping for mana and untapping it. So there's a lot of sweet things you could do with this card. And if something I missed, you could let me know down in the comments. So let's get into number 2 on my list. Now, this one is a double feature. I really kind of have Green Sun's Twilight as my number 2. I think it's the best of the cycle. The red one is kind of sweet as a number 3 on my list. The other 2 I think are strictly kind of bad. But I like the fact that the Green Sun's Twilight is probably the best in regards to being constructed playable. All it takes is 6 mana. You get any strong creature card from the top of your library. And also a land. So if you're playing Valakut in Modern, it digs 5 for a Primetime and a Valakut, which is quite amazing. I'm super excited about trying this in the next season in that style of deck. Now, Black Sun's Twilight has kind of got me a little bit on the fence. So there's a lot of these type of effects where, you know, one target creature gets -X until end of turn, or deal damage to target creature, you gain that much life. This effect has been overly done in black. Wizards, stop trying to make this thing. I mean, this thing is done in, like, I feel like every year there's a new one now. And it's kind of getting old. But this one's kind of cool because it has the ability to where you can, if you pay 5 or more for the X, you can get back a target creature with mana value X or less. So that is really awesome. So you can get back a Shieldridge for 6 mana and deal with a threat. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 type thing here, right? Because you were 1-for-1 their creature, but you also get a creature back. So in that regard, it's quite powerful. But like I said, I just don't know if it's better than Green Sun's Twilight, but I'm super excited about trying both. Let's get into the number 1 card of this new set. And before we do get into the number 1, I do want to throw out a honorary number 1. This, in all seriousness, is probably the best card in the entire set for Pioneer, right? We were missing these. This was a huge foundation of a nuisance when it comes to making constructed mana bases, and it really pushed you into the enemy colors because of the fact that you didn't have the Gruul land, you didn't have the Selesnya. Azorius is pretty reasonable, I guess, for spirits. Is probably the most noticeable tribe. And also it kind of helps, I guess, with soldiers, which is now a new thing. Black Cliffs is definitely going to see play on Rakdos mid-range. So that's duly noted. And keep in mind, I did showcase my favorite colors: green, red, and blue. So that is kind of why you don't see the Dimir one. No, just no. So this is my honorary number 1. Like I said, I think this is just the best cycle, best cards for Pioneer. There's an actual number 1. Let's get into it. Number 1 on my list is Skyrilev Defector Might. Now, what makes this card so powerful is one deck, right? It exists in Modern, it exists in Legacy, Death and Taxes. And the key foundational piece of that deck is a 1-drop that protects the legit cards, right? And that was missing in Pioneer. What I don't like about this card, it is legendary. So you might be able to run like 3 of these in your Pioneer Death and Taxes. But it is really amazing that we are able to get a choose target creature, gets hexproof and proc from a color. And that is really kind of awesome. It's needed for a Death and Taxes style deck to exist. So if you could play this into a Thalia, some other sort of tax-like effect on a body, it really helps protect them. So I'm super excited about this card for Pioneer. I do have a list brewed, I believe, for Pioneer and Modern, in case I want like 2 more copies of Giver of Runes in Modern. So I just want to try this card and see how it actually plays out in general. But I am excited at the fact that there is this type of effect in Pioneer. I was kind of worried, actually, that they would never print this type of thing into Standard again, because it's so well known that these types of cards are format warping when it comes to protection spells. So, like I said, if there's anything that I missed, don't be hesitant. Let me know down in the comments. Until next time, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And this concludes the Phyrexia All Will Be One top 5, top 10 lists. So, have a good one.